In this video, I'm going to talk about drawing ellipses and some different ideas that I've both seen other people do and sort of created, just to help understand how to draw them in a way that is at least somewhat accurate, and you'll see. Anyways, then I'm going to apply some of those thoughts on ellipses, and to just beginning a drawing of something like this with a bunch of cylindrical candles and ellipses in there and all sorts of good stuff. So this first one, I sort of think of this first one, if you've never done it, if you've never sort of practiced drawing, it will it'll take a while before that sort of seeps in. But what I do like about just this first approach is that if I'm doing something, if I'm just quickly sketching, and I don't want to worry too much about exactly where the ellipse is going to go. Maybe I'm sketching in a can or something. I'll just make these, I'll make a quick major axis. I may even make the minor axis. I may not. But the idea is that I'm just giving myself sort of minimal guidance and just trying to do something quickly and not to agonize. I know it's not going to be perfect, but if I can get it sort of just close enough to something that looks elliptical, that can be a nice way to start out. And it is good practice to just be able to go in a constant fluid motion and try to get comfortable and practiced at that. Let's see, so that's that one. The second one, I need more paper. I've seen this technique a couple times, and I'm kind of curious about it. I think it's cool in that it's not too cumbersome and technical, but it still gives more guidance than that first idea. And the idea is just, if I'm setting up something a little more carefully, and I want to have a little better idea of what some ellipse might look like, I'll take a little bit more time in identifying the major axis and the minor axis. And I'm going to sketch some fairly wide horizontals and then relatively shorter verticals on the end. And then just kind of imagine what those angles would look like. So it's very imperfect, but if you sort of sketch it in slowly and then build up, I did it a little bit darker than I normally would. But that can be kind of handy, and especially where I've seen it used to nice effect when you're doing ellipses at an angle, which you'll often be doing. And just sketching in something like that is obviously very imperfect, but it's going to give me a decent idea of how that ellipse would end up. This third one, a lot of times when you're looking at something cylindrical, let me see if I can, it's tricky to just sort of be able to tell just how open it is, the distance from there to there and the distance from there to there. And what can be helpful is to literally just sort of imagine what the points are and then sketch in a little angle a line connecting those. The idea being that that's going to help get a better sense of just how open or not open the ellipse needs to be. And I'm slowing down even a little bit more. And as I'm looking at whatever it is I'm trying to draw, if it's this, for example, I'll think about this angle from here to here, here to here. And that can help get a more realistic sense of how open it is or not. A lot of times it's easy to just make these ellipses way too open or too closed. So that's helpful. And if I sketch this in, once again, sketching darker than I would, even this starts to give me a sense for just how symmetrical I'm starting. I mean, I can see I've had to sort of shift things a little bit, but eyeballing that sort of diamond and trying to get it, somewhat accurate at this stage can be really helpful as well. Sometimes then I would do the football, but don't tell any other art teachers I said that. I find the football can be helpful. I don't know what it is right now. Or the almond shape or the eyeball. But the important thing is to know that it will be round at this point. So even if you start with a football shape, got to make sure to come back and round it out. And let's see, this last one I'm going to do is after I've sort of sketched in something, if I'm really trying to get a little bit more precise, or I don't even know if that's a good word. The sort of understanding at what rate this curve changes relative to these different points is a tricky thing to learn. At least I know it is for a lot of folks. I know it was for me. Still is. So to help with that, there's all sorts of things you can do, all sorts of little systems. Some are extremely cumbersome. I have started sort of a simplified never mind, a simplified geometric idea. And then I'm going to take these points and I'm going to find the midpoints on the top half over here. I'm going to sketch that in. And then that one. Just these are straight lines, not that great. And then I'll do the same thing on the lower half. And then I'm going to come back to these points and I'm going to aim them about halfway it's not very half over on these lines, and then sketch in a couple more straight lines. Parabolic. That's the word I was looking for. I think it's sort of the geometry of parabolas and curves and hyperbolas and that sort of stuff. But the point is to sort of understand, at least for me, understanding the rate that the curve will sort of be flatter and then become more angled. And this is not an exact, this is very just sort of to get the general idea. But the idea is that along here, for these horizontal points, the line is going to be much more relaxed and only slightly curvy, and it'll start speeding up its curve until it gets to this point right here, and once again it won't stop, but it will go through there. The actual ellipse goes just a little bit outside of those guides. So that's a few different thoughts on different ways to approach working on ellipses and doing them in different orientations, whether it's vertical or horizontal, is another important thing to practice and get good at. Clearly I've mastered it. So just to make sure that I sort of apply that to this little candle drawing, I have another sort of semi-transparent version. So if I'm talking about this candle, I'm thinking about the widest points, which is actually a little bit lower than the perspective center. That's another nice conversation. But I want to think of something like that and that, and make sure I sort of have a good sense of the major axis and the minor axis, and that I set up my guides in a way that everything is symmetrical and equal. Then I'll have a sporting chance of making a decent ellipse. More of a chance than just blindly going for it. Although that can be fun as well. And it's a good goal to get to, I will say. One of the very important things about ellipses in relation to the cylinders that they are usually associated with is to know that the further away from eye level, the more circular, open the ellipse becomes. The closer it is to eye level, the more closed it becomes. So in this photograph, the photographer was, I don't know, somewhere close up here, and I know that because this ellipse is extremely closed, almost straight across, flat. This one's a little bit more open, and this is a little bit more open still. I could be drawing that on here. I don't even know if you can see it, but and in thinking about the bottom ellipses, what helps is to really kind of make sure you do set up this major and minor axis, and make sure that you don't sketch it in sort of too low, the major axis. That can be something that is tempting to do when trying to sort of see through and draw through something. It's, if I was imagining the bottom ellipse of this candle, I might just really start thinking that it curves a lot sooner than it does, and then I'm going to end up with an ellipse that's flatter, more closed than the top, which is exactly the opposite of how it will be, and is the main thing to make sure you take away from understanding ellipses and how they relate to their cylinders, their host cylinders. So I want to make sure that this distance is longer than this distance. And this one is not much, but it's critically important. So that's a few ideas on on that stuff, I'm going to do a little bit, some quick videos on drawing these candles and just setting that up. And I hope you check that out and enjoy it too. Okay. Oh man, you tilted. You tilt-a-whirl.